I welcome all of you for today online workshop for coaches and players. And today topic is stress management and psychological preparation for a Sepak Takraw player. And today our guest lecturer is Dr. Rakesh Tomar, faculty Fawad, King Fawad University of Petroleum and Minerals, Saudi Arabia. So I welcome Dr. Rakesh Tomar. So and now you can take over.
Okay, thank you so much, Yogendra sir. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Although it's morning in my place, but it's a good afternoon way back, in India. So before I begin, I must congratulate Sepak Takraw Federation of India for organizing such a meaningful session for its coaches and players. And I am personally, very thankful to Shri Yogendra Dahiya ji, Secretary General STFI, for inviting me to speak on psychology preparation and stress management. Yogendra ji is an excellent person and a very fine professional under whose efforts Sepak Takraw India has reached new heights. He is instrumental in promoting the game in India to a great extent. And I also thank Dr. S. Premraj, President of STFI, under whose guidance this game is flourishing and nurturing. So let me now just go to first, I will share my slides. Okay. So the topic for today's lecture is stress management and psychological preparation, for a Sepak Takraw player. And of course, I will cover the coaches also in the end part of my lecture. This lecture will be divided into 3 sections. First, I will talk about psychological preparation of a Sepak Takraw player. Then in later section, in the middle section, I will talk about the stress management, how we can manage stress, for the players. And in the last section, I will talk about the stress management of the coaches, which is also very significant because most of the time our coaches are also under stress. So first, let me begin with psychological preparation. So before I begin, we have to understand, that for me, if you ask me, as a professional, I will say every coach and every athlete or every player has to be a psychologist. This is very important. We all are having an inbuilt psychologist within us, and we have to take out that psychologist from out of us and implement in real game situation settings. So there is a very important quote, if you can see on your screen, that champions are not made in gym. Champions are made for something they have deep inside them, a desire, a dream, a vision. This is very important for every player. You have to have these 3 things, to win in any game, win in any situation. And as we all know that sports performance can be influenced by the 4 major factors. There are 4 deciding factors. The first is technical, then tactical, then physical, and the most important one is psychological. If we go by the experiences of the players at elite levels and various other levels, you see that once the players have mastered their skills and they are at international level, its physical abilities count only for 10%. The rest 90% is all about your mental skills and your mental game. So psychology plays a very, very important role in winning any game. There are ample research which shows that more physically skilled athletes are not always more successful compared to less physically skilled athletes. And why this is? This is because of the differences in their mental gains. So it is the mental ability which makes a difference, at elite level normally. And sometimes it is more important to be strong psychologically than to be strong physically. Even if you are strong physically, you may lose because of your weak psychological traits. In fact, the mental game is often the primary explanation for sports outcomes and fluctuations in individual performances. And remember, it is the deficit in the psychological game rather than the errors in physical performance that keeps many players away from performing their best in practice or in competition. Again, if you must have heard some of these quotes also, that your body can stand almost anything. Physically, we can be as strong as possible. We can withstand any physical difficulties and complexity of a training. It's your mind that you have to convince. If your mind is convinced, you can go and train to a level you want. But if your mind is not convinced, whatever effort you make, that effort will go in vain. And if you want to define psychological preparation, basically it is the set of training and education strategies and techniques used in order to increase the mental capacity and to develop sportsman personality according to the requirements of the sports, events, or of the specific sport, so as to obtain the high effects, and results in training and competition. In other words, if we want to just see that definition, it is the maximization of the sportsman's performance cannot be obtained without maximizing the sportsman's personality. So we have to maximize, we have to take out maximum from the personality of a sportsman if we want to take best from him in any sports or any competition. And of course those things has to be done at start from the grassroots level, right from the with the help of the coaches and the organizations which are associated with that game. So we need following psychological skills, and most of the skills are known to us here, like mental toughness, which is very important, motivation to compete, self-confidence, imagining is very important. A day before, like for example a competition, you sleep and you imagine many times. We play games while we are just not even playing games. So you can play games in your mind, you can plan your strategies in your mind, and you can perform your entire game. You can visualize the entire game in your mind, and even you can find errors while you're not playing. You can play in your mind through imagery, and you can improve yourself through that process also. And I have done personally that many times. Even before any important competitions, imagery is very important. Energy management, performance routines, team cohesion, again for all the team games, especially in sepak takraw, the team cohesion is very important, and the goal setting. And once the players have mastered his mental game, they can focus on physical dimensions of the sport and thereby give their full potential. Now, from here, we can now understand the importance of developing the psychological dimension of the game. No matter what is the level of competition, whether you're playing at an elite level or you're playing at the national level or at state level, or you are playing even at a grassroots level, you are just trying starting to begin your career in the sports. It's very important that we develop the psychological dimensions right from the beginning. The player has entered into that sports. And in other words, it attempts to minimize the effects of negative mental influences, and at the same time positive influences the players like psyche in order to reach high sports efficiency. The aim of psychological preparation is to make use of psychological findings to increase efficiency of other sports training components and to fix the efficiency level in competition equal to that is acquired at a training level. So you have to fix all those things, right at the at the training level, which you need to perform, during the competition. So the approach of psychological preparation is, the first is a model training, then second is regulation of current mental states, it's very important. Then regulation of interpersonal relationships, between the team members and the entire the people who are involved in formation of a team, whether it's a coaching staff or other supporting staffs. Influencing the personality of an athlete, again very important. So let's take them one by one first. So first is a model training. The starting point of model training is a theoretical knowledge of adaptation process from the point of view of psychology. Adaptation stimuli are represented by situational influences which negatively influence the player's activity with their psychogenic effects. Now, what follows is that it is necessary to include competition situations, or we can say the models, into the training. Coach is required to be inventive. It's very important because here comes the role of a coach when we are talking about the psychological preparation of a player. He has to be creative, like an actor or like a director, and he should be able to convincingly influence his trainees, influence his players, who on the other hand must cooperate during the model training by accepting the rules of the model. Then regulation of current mental states. Now here we can divide these current mental states into three parts. The pre-start, like before the start of a competition, then mental states during the competition, and the most important is the post-competition mental states, which later depends upon the the outcome of the competition. Many times the mental states are affected because of that. So the pre-start states, usually these mental states, they appear when the athlete realizes that he is participating in an important competition, and these states gradually melt into a competition states. Basically pre-start states and competition states, they go hand by hand. Then comes the post-competition states. These are evoked by subjective assessment of the course of a competition. So as I said, it depends upon the the outcome of your competition, and it can last for several hours. So again here our coaching staff and the people associated with the teams, they have to play a very important role. So the starting point for regulating such states depends again upon the activation level of players. Every player has a different activation level. So every player will have a different level of post-competition states. Not the entire team will be in the same stage. So in the team, all the players will be at different level of mental states depending upon their activation levels. And what are these activation levels? Like for example, if there is a too high level of activation, so that the person may start like feeling fever, maybe he will have the negative sentiments like aversive jitters, or he may have a positive. So you can have both, you can have a negative or positive depending upon the outcome of the competition and depending upon the level of mental state of an individual player in your team. Then second is a low level of activation. If a player has a low level of activation, then he will have start apathy, means he will start disliking things, dislike about himself. They will be indifference. So we have to control both of these things, high level activation and low level activation. And as I told you, this post-competition state originate from success or failure. Even if your team is successful, you will have a different set of mental states. If your team is not able to perform, then there will be a different state of mental condition. So failure causes, as we know, that may cause depression, it may cause neurotic manifestations, it may cause like resignations from a team, maybe hopelessness, with the team members. So we have to handle these post-competition states very carefully, and analyzing them becomes very important, part on the part of the coaching staff. Now, these means of regulations can again further be divided into following, like we can lower the activation if it is too much, or we can increase the activation. Again, depends upon, that's why we said we have to analyze our team. We have to be in our, in touch with the team, in touch with the players constantly, understanding each individual differently, having a file for each person, each player, each sportsman. We should have a separate file, recorded, with the coach and with the necessary coaching staffs. So depending upon that, either we may require to lower this activation level, or we may have to increase this activation level, or like lowering the negative experiences of the failure. It's very important. And removing the psychological effects of fatigue. Again, remember, whenever we are in a training, or maybe we are in an intense competition where we have to play back-to-back matches, so it is very important. Fatigue can be physical, but fatigue is also mental. So we have to remove the psychological effects of the fatigue. Now, the interpersonal relationships. In a team, there are two basic types of relationships among players. The first is a competition, and second is cooperation. And indeed, both of these are equally important. So both of these are usually present in any team in an optimum degree. So if competition overwhelms cooperation, remember, if the competition overwhelms or more than the cooperation, there is a rivalry in the team, which affects cooperation. Because we have as I told you, in the team we have different individuals, and every individual is different according to his personality. Again, if you have a high level of cooperation without competition, this will lead to general benevolence or lethargy, or complacency, which may result in necessary motivation. So too much cooperation and too much competition will have their own negative effects on a team. So it is very important to balance these two traits in a team: competition and cooperation. Key performance, it's very important that we have to understand that high skilled players, and the low skilled players, so there is a big difference, between these two, and this is because of, many times because of the effective decision making under pressure during the match. So decision making, I will come into that later on, for a few minutes. It's very important. The decision making is now, taking a front seat, in psychological games. So it's very important that we organize our teams, our training sessions, so that we can develop the decision making among players. Because normally when you train, during your training sessions and when you play a competition, settings are different. So how you take decision under those pressures, we will come into that later on. Research evidence has suggested that these game intelligence skills are primarily acquired through activities in which practice has the same underlying structure as the competition. So of course this must be practiced by the coaches, and we have to follow that, that all the training sessions, they have the same underlying structure as that of competition. If that is missing, of course we will miss that slight edge in the competition compared to other teams. Now, conditions in the practice are said to be effective. Remember, they will be effective only if they engage processing demands. Like, for example, visual search. You imagine and you look for that image in your mind and act accordingly. Then recognition, and as I told you, decision making. And this is very important for the player, which are same as required in the competition. So therefore, the main goal of a coaching or main goal of a coach when he is giving a training is for the players to acquire skills that transfers to improved performance in the competition through the design of representative practice environments that simulate the demands of that format. However, the achievement of a good psychological training of athlete is conditioned both by the knowledge of the laws of the process of structuring the player's personality and by the mastery of psychopedagogical knowledge of the training program of the player from a physical, technical, tactical point of view. So it's very important, whether it is for a coach, whether it is for a player, that he has to possess the necessary required knowledge of all this process of game. That's why I said every coach is a psychologist. Every player has to be a psychologist. You have to understand the laws, you have to understand the knowledge, you have to acquire those processes. Then only after understanding them properly, you can transform them into a real training situation and in the game situation. Now, decision making. So let's first come back. What are the traditional approaches? Here I found some research very interesting. Which is many coaches are applying. In other games. I tried to search many some psychological settings related to the game of sepak takraw, but unfortunately, very few research has been done. In sepak takraw. And after this workshop, and if we will find time later on, I would like to see that more research, should take place, on psychological aspects, of this game. The traditional approach to coaching young athletes is characterized by reducing the demands of the game for learners through multiple repetitions of a single skill with no opponents in order to acquire motor skill. So this is a traditional approach of coaching, generally, what we were following for so many years. Now, although whatever we are doing these these approaches, these drill type activities with no active decision making for players, all these approaches where there is no active decision making for players may produce a better performance in practice. You will certainly get a very good performance in the practice. You will get a very good performance in the training sessions, but they are unlikely to promote positive transfer of game intelligence skills from practice to the competition. You may be training very well. You are performing very well because you are performing those movements repeatedly. So of course in training you will do very well. And in practice you will do very well, but it will not be that easy to transfer those game intelligence skills from practice to the competition. And that's where decision making comes important. So what is important in practice is the interactive relationship between the learner and the specific constraint imposed by the practice environment. And what is that specific constraint? The constraint in the practice needs to be adequately replicate competition conditions. So that's the match play. So match play is very important because that is the constraint which you will be missing during the training session. So in order to increase transfer of skill acquisition, so you have to transfer that skill acquired in the training to the competition state. And one method for coaches is to manipulate the constraints of practice by using active decision-making activities. So the coaches has to implement and use active decision-making activities during the training so that player can transfer those skills easily during the competition state. Now, the game-based activities, when we are talking about the decision-making, means you have to increase more game-based activities during your training session than the drill type activity. And nowadays, if you see in many other games, the coaches are focusing more on game-based activities rather than on drill-based activities. So these game-based activities that include active decision-making for the players, as found in the full version of sports, are predicted to elicit greater improvements in the ability for players to use visual search and scanning and make accurate decisions during the competition compared to the drill-based practices. So even with the research, in many other games, this has been proved that game-based activities are providing better results than the drill-based activities. So the recent increase in the use of game-based activities over drill-based activities to improve young players' decision-making skills might be linked to recent changes and revisions to the coach manuals and coaching education courses and guidelines on player skill acquisition. So nowadays, in many countries, and in different games, the coaching manuals, the coaching education courses, they have changed their guidelines, and they are now more focusing on the game-based activities over drill-based activities. Now, taking into account the specificity of contemporary sport, the coach has to master a lot of knowledge from interdisciplinary fields such as biochemistry, physiology, anatomy, biodynamics, biomechanics, endocrinology, psychology, etc., etc. So the coach has to master this knowledge. There is no shortcut. There is no escape from it. He has to, and to some extent, the players also has to understand. And that's where we have differences. That's how this is the slight edge. As I told you, at elite level, the margin of error is very less. Everybody is proficient in the skills, and that's where with the knowledge of the allied fields with your game, you can make a difference in winning and losing. So relying on this informational complex and capitalizing on it will make him more creative, so that he can also provide the psychological training to the athletes. So the coaches himself has to be very well equipped to provide the required psychological training to the athletes. Hence, there is a need for collaboration. That's very, very important. Collaboration is very, very important in sports. Sports is never seen as a single entity. Sports is a combination of various allied sciences or social sciences. So there is a need for collaboration with specialists in the related fields. In the process of psychological training of athletes, there are three forms. The first is basic psychological training, where the qualities of the player personality are formed. Second is special psychological training, in which the qualities necessary for practicing various sporting branches are formed. And the third one is psychological training for the competition. Now, process of psychological preparation in sports refers to three main groups of processes. That is, first is the knowledge, then sensitiveness, and will, the willpower of a player. So first is the knowledge process. The knowledge process refers to the objective reality usually met in the game by means of perceptions. The pitch with its various lines, the spaces, and various technical and tactical acts and actions which are connected to it. Players, which can include the partners or opponents, and with their different positions, according to which the same tactical procedures are formed. So the knowledge is the first important part in psychological preparation. And then second comes sensitiveness, like your emotions, your feelings, which represents the part on which coaches focuses most. A large period when a player's efficiency decreases is caused by excessive tension that appears before a game, a weak mobilization for the games without an important stake. Players' depressions, again very important. Depression is very, very crucial in all the teams, which is caused by the reasons other than the sport. So it's not necessary that these psychological factors or psychological these deficiencies are because of the training or because of the competition. The factors can be outside the game also. Factors can be in their personal life. So we have to address that also. Then decrease of competitive feeling or the victory feeling. This is again very important. Mental and nerve fatigue, which is caused by various preoccupations, inner conflicts, etc. Then fatigue caused by effort, and maybe because of the heat, because of cold, and many other factors. And third is your will. It is the mental quality that consciously determines someone's action in order to reach a certain goal. Like for example, a point is scored by getting over multiple difficulties. You don't get a point so easily. So you have to score a point against the opponent, by overcoming these difficulties. And these difficulties can be either from outside. Outside is what? Like opponents, your time, the field, the audience, referees, and many other factors. And then from inside. Inside is your fear, your fatigue, nervousness, the pain caused by the injuries. So these are all, difficulties which you face from the inner level. So players' will must be developed and perfected, because the competition conditions, including like weekly trips, sometimes there are long trips, long journey times, various opponent teams, audience is loud many times, are most of the time unfavorable to a team. So you have to deal with these all unfavorable situations. And the most important ways and means to achieve a psychological preparation are training of players' motivation for practicing performance. And this can be like your moral aspect, which is related to the practice of the sport, related to reaching a high level of professionalism, related to gaining recognition both at national and international level. And it can be done, with a special or well-known and appreciated personality, which is a material aspect. Then there is ethical conversation, very important. And these conversations, should be organized by the management members and the coaches. And this should be open and sincere discussions about some problems closely connected to the life of the players. So we have to discuss many times. The team, the coaches, the members should discuss, the problems related to the personal lives of the players. The development of thinking in the game. For that, you can do a progressive presentation of the playing system, of course, with active participation of the players, emphasizing on the explanations by using some intuitive materials like board, videos, and posters. Introduction of precise themes when playing. So use, special and small, precision themes. Observation of the game of other teams, as most of us are doing, regularly, and followed by discussions and analysis. Then team spirit, development of a team spirit, which can be done by combining collective and personal interest, combining the player's prestige with the coach prestige. So this has to be, combined together, the player's prestige with the coach prestige. Then only you will develop a team spirit. And necessity to apply just measures and their persistent maintenance, permanent maintenance, and the development of team spirit. Then self-confidence. So depending upon the possibilities, it can be by persuasion, by convincing. Convincing is very, very important. I always feel until and unless you are not convinced, you are not be able to do, the required physical tasks. So convincing is very, very important to gain self-confidence. First, you have to convince, by yourself, yes, I can do that. And then, it's very important, the realistic critic. So critic is very important again. Criticism is not always, negative. So, but this criticism has to be realistic. Then self-analysis related to the results, and we have to work for the good results, depending upon the outcomes. Then training of perseverance and decision is achieved by guided preparation of the player under tough conditions. And the tough conditions are like great effort, higher effort, unfavorable time, exercises of great difficulty, playing with an inferior number of players. So it's always, that's why nowadays many this game-based activities are with the inferior number of players. The training of the will is achieved within an entire educational complex system from a very early age, and the training process follows the following aspects like discipline, will to win, to be combative, to assert oneself, will to get over difficulties, will to get over tiredness and any other circumstantial difficulties. Now, we know that stronger physical characteristics such as muscular strength, power, and endurance have the advantages in reducing the risk of sports injuries. So similarly, stronger psychological skills such as having higher self-confidence level, courage or mental toughness in sports could have a similar advantages, leading to a better sporting performance outcomes. As we know that the game of in the sepak takraw is an impressive offensive movement. Now, as I told you, not many studies have been done in relation to how the injuries takes place in the game of sepak takraw. So there are various movements performed, and because of the the nature of the game, there are different jumps and the players fall on the floor, and because of the skills. So there's so many injuries happening, and these injuries are not only because of not only because of the physical aspect of the game. The psychological aspects plays a very, very important role. Because of the deficit in psychological traits, player can get injured. So we need a lot of studies, a lot of investigation, especially in the sepak takraw, how we can minimize the injuries using the psychological techniques. And of course, recently some research have been done which includes the injury prevention and looking after how physical and psychological strength can play an important role in prevention and treatment of sports injuries in the game of sepak takraw. So for the psychological settings, there's a lot of evidence which is available, which shows that the stress which occurs, now we'll come on to the stress very soon, which occurs before and during the competition could influence the players' physical and psychological status and during injuries. So this is all about the psychological preparation of a player in sepak takraw. Of course, there are so many things to talk in psychology, and we need generally we can talk on a specific aspects, like we talk about the mental toughness or decision making. There are many aspects of psychological training. So I have just given you in a nutshell what we are supposed to do. Then later on we can drill on each factor individually in detail. So this requires different sessions on particular psychological skills to be learned. Now let's come to our second aspect of this presentation, which is stress management. Now stress is again very important. Now I will not talk about here stress which normally we see that we see in your personal life. Of course it's similar to that, but here stress because of the training, stress because of the competitions. So the aim of the stress management, whenever we talk about stress, it means that to learn methods that can be used to help players to control stress and anxiety. And learning to cope with these anxiety and stress levels is vital to players and coaches who has to perform in a high pressure situations. And nowadays, because of the tough competitions, because of the nature of the games, because of the tribal itineraries, so players and teams and coaches are always in some sort of a stress, and we have to reduce this level. So there are different techniques. I will discuss here around 13 to 14 techniques which can help as a player you as a player to reduce your level of stress. The first one is applied relaxation. So in this technique, basically there are 6 stages, and this is also called as a like progressive muscle relaxation, which is the first stage of this technique. In this technique, maybe some of you must have experienced this technique during your training sessions and maybe after your competition. In this, muscles are contracted and they are tensed and subsequently relaxed, which is used to help facilitate relaxation and help the player to reduce anxiety symptoms. As the player becomes more proficient in this skill and moves to a stage 2, that is muscle relaxation is promoted by relaxing the muscles without tensing them first. So here you will relax the muscle even without contracting them. So this is a stage 2. In the stage 3, when you master first stage and second stage, the stage 3, the term relax is conditioned to bring on a relaxed state when spoken or thought by the player. It means a player can relax his muscle, player can relax his the body, even just by talking and by thinking about that in the mind. So a focus on breathing here is also important, as well as a focus on passive concentration, which is an effortless, automatic, yet focused state of mind, similar to mindfulness. In the stage 4, a player has to learn to use the skill in real life settings. Now, once you master the first 3 stages of relaxation, now you have to use this skill in your real life settings. So like relaxing appropriate muscles while engaging those muscles needed for activity. And in the stage 5, focus on having an athlete relax while naturally, occurring non-stressful situation. And here the breathing is very important. Then the 6th and the final stage is called application training. So once you have mastered, this progressive muscle relaxation in the first 5 stages, then comes the application training. It means the relaxation technique is implemented in a practice or training session and then in a low stake competition. Now you can implement this technique during the training and also in a low stake competitions. And the more frequently and completely it is implemented, the easier it will be for the player to use this strategy in higher level of competitions also. And second is arousal techniques. Now, some research have suggested that players differ on the level of activation needed to produce optimal performance. So various levels of arousal are often conducive to high performance, and it is paramount that player perceives the arousal as beneficial. While many stress management approaches take on arousal reduction focus, but there are strategies to increase the arousal, which can include, you can use again imagery, you can use the self-talk, you can use the goal setting and cognitions, methods to, increase or decrease the arousal. And third is autogenic training. This also, some of you might have practiced autogenic training during your training sessions. This was first introduced, in psychiatry by Joanne Henrich, which involves a series of exercises designed to produce sensations such as warmthness, heaviness, in order to promote relaxation. Now here also there are different stages. The first stage, in this is that here you learn, and you practice relaxation like heaviness in your extremities, like your hands and legs, then warmth in your extremities, warmth in your hands and legs, then regulation of your cardiac activity. You have to regulate your heartbeat, your breathing, then comes the breathing, and then your abdominal warmth, and then cooling of your forehead. And for this, we can always give a verbal cues to the players that can be used to help in prompting these sensations. Again, the biofeedback training, very important. Once you understand biofeedback training, means once you understand, what are the physiological stress responses, like your increased heart rate, your increased blood pressure. So the feedback, about these can also help you to, design your, relaxation, strategies and reduction in your stress. So in biofeedback training, basically a player is aware about how stress is manifested physiologically, such as changes in his blood pressure and heart rate, and changes in his breathing pattern or muscle tightness, using different modes of objective feedback and monitoring. Now with this awareness, players are better equipped to control their actions, and with training, players will become less reliant on the feedback, and they are able to control their physiological responses on their own. Then fifth is a breath control or deep breathing. This is again very, very effective way of managing the stress. So you can easily, improve your, stress, condition, by following, the breathing techniques. So in this, you can hold your breath or random shallow breaths, and this can affect your performance, and which can again influence your coordination levels, which can influence the focus, which can influence your rhythm, and can cause the player to feel unsettled and causing further stress. So what you can do is, when you do a deep breathing, basically your lungs are, like visualized, or you can say conceptualized in 3 parts, for proper instruction of a slow and complete breath. The lower lungs are filled by pushing the diaphragm down first and forcing the abdomen out. Then middle portion of the lungs is then filled and by expanding the chest cavity and expanding the rib cage also. The upper lungs are then filled by raising the chest and the rib cage. This is how you have to take the deep breath. And that breath is held for several seconds. And then after holding the breath for several seconds, you have to follow a slow exhalation, taking approximately double the time you have taken for the inhalation of the breath. So breath control is commonly used before a competition. Normally we use it before the competition, or we can use it during a natural break during the competition, as it is most practiced, practically applied during non-active times. Then next one is imagery. Imagery is the use of mental images and scenarios to help you relax your mind. So this can be either external, like seeing your performance within your body, or it can be external, viewing your performance as if you are someone else and you are, somewhere else. So this can be done, by visualizing a picture, by visualizing a favorite place, or by, visualizing a scene, or you can even visualize to rehearse the upcoming performance. And this can be done at 3 levels: the neuromuscular level, where your nerves and muscles are involved; at the cognitive level, your thinking and planning; and third, at the confidence building level. And 7th is a goal setting. If your goals are not set, you will be in stress. It's very important. That's why, to set, the goals which will help the player to direct their attention to the task in hand, so they know that what they have to do, which will structure their training to meet their goals, which will increase their confidence, because once the goals are achieved, you get a confidence. So goals are very important because they give you a sense of achievement, and they can also help to evaluate the performance and monitor the progress. But however, you should keep in mind that the goals must be challenging enough. It should not be very easy, and they should not be out of your reach. So if you cannot reach to your goals, that goal will lead to the stress. So the general rule is that the goal just beyond the previous, set the goal just beyond the previous performance level. And there must be always a long-term goal which can be achieved by short and intermediate goals. And of course, these goals and achievements must be measurable, means you should be able to measure those goals. It's not that just you set the goals and you are not able to measure them. So you must be able to measure those goals objectively. Then comes your anxiety management, which involves the players learning to employ relaxation strategies under stressful or arousing situations, like including those producing emotions such as anger and anxiety. During anxiety management training, the player visualizes the stressful situation and allows the accompanying physiological arousal to be generated within himself. Now here we can apply, some previous techniques like applied relaxation. We can apply progressive muscle relaxation. We can use a breath control, deep breathing, meditation, to control symptoms which are aroused, or because of the demand of training or competitions. Then comes the cognitive affective stress management training. Now this training is one of the most comprehensive multimodal stress management programs used in sports. Originally, it is designed by Ronald Smith. Then the program is designed to teach the athlete relaxation and cognitive skills that can help in controlling physiological reactions and cognitive thought patterns. So here we give different interventions which can be both cognitive and which can be both physiological, which includes relaxation skills, cognitive restructuring your training, and that is self-instructed and targets the physical and mental reactions to the stress. And many times such programs, which has some empirical support, and they are like educational rather than psychotherapeutic in nature, and is designed to help athletes increase their self-control. Then comes, you must have heard about the term hypnosis. Hypnosis involves getting the athlete to an altered state of consciousness in which he is relaxed and where perceptions, feelings, thoughts, or actions can be changed through suggestions. Although still somewhat controversial, still the hypnosis, there are, some contradictions, there are some controversies, and it is sometimes misunderstood. But still, the hypnosis has been used, with the players to help reduce anxiety. They are doing, they are able to do it, successfully, manage stress, as well as enhance other mental skills like focus, attention, and to increase confidence. Now, we can use, other stress management techniques such as relaxation and imagery or visualization, in conjunction with hypnosis. But the player should be in a hypnotic state before they are applied. Typically, hypnosis is applied in 4 phases. The first is the induction phase, where the player is put into a relaxed stage. And then second is a hypnotic phase, where the players are given suggestions and designed to target the issue at hand, and most of which will be carried out once out of hypnosis. And the third is waking up phase, which consists of the player coming back, to of a conscious state, and the post-hypnotic phase, which involves player carrying out suggestions given to him while in hypnotized state. Now, players will benefit from hypnosis only to the extent, remember, he can only benefit only to the extent to which they are able to be influenced at their subconscious level. And the next is meditation. It is, another method of raising self-awareness, and this can be practiced, and this is being practiced by many people, in different sports settings, different sports around the world, and which is found to be, very effective in controlling your various physiological functions like increased heart rate, anxiety, and helping, confidence building. Then performance and competition planning, again very important. You have to plan your performance and competition. When you have this planning in your hand, you can deal with the stress which is generated during training and competition in a very effective manner. If there is no planning, then certain things will go out of hand, which may result in increasing the stress level in players and also in coaches. So this planning can be done like as a pre-performance and performance plans, before performance and during performance. And this has been suggested to promote proper focus and attention towards relevant issues, and which help to attain the proper level of activation for the performance. And the last one is the self-compassion. This is last but not the least, and I will say this is the most important, the component in dealing with your stress. Self-compassion is interventions that can help prevent, players from becoming overly self-critical. Many times we are, too much self-critical about ourselves. So there are 3 main components here. The first is self-kindness. Means you should be very kind to yourself. So which involves being understanding and accepting toward oneself. So you have to understand and accept yourself during instances of adversity. So when there is an adverse situation, when there is a situation which is not in your favor, so you have to understand and accept yourself and not be too much self-critical. Too much self-critical is not good for the level, good for your stress levels. And then you have to understand second thing, that the experiences which you are having are not isolating. Means others are also having these experiences. So you are not the only one who is facing these experiences, who is feeling these experiences. There are many other people who are having these experiences. So you have to understand that. And the third one is the mindfulness, which involves a balanced perspective, keeping your thoughts and feelings in a state of equilibrium as opposed to over-identifying them. So strategies to promote self-compassion includes like writing, it can include imagery, and it can be a psycho-educational components. Now I will quickly move to the stress management techniques for the coaches. Maybe I will take another 6-7 minutes and I will finish this. So our coaches are most of the times they are also in a too much stress. So what we can do to reduce the stress to our coaches. So there are some, I will take some 6-7 points here. The first and most important is take breaks. And nowadays, because of this lockdown, we are in a very big break. So in order to prevent burnout, it is important to remember to step away from the game. So this can take several forms, from a quick 15-minute break up to actual vacation time. Depends upon your situation. Like for example, you can leave the office and go for a walk around the complex to give your mind some kind of rest. So taking break is very important. Then exercising is very important and very effective way to relieve the stress of the job. And we all know that we are in the field, this field of exercise. We know that how it can help us to relieve the stress. Taking extended vacations before or after a season, that can be with your family, with your friends, to make sure that your mind is fresh for the new year. After taking a break, coaches return to the field with a clean slate and a fresh set of eyes. So coaches are not only relaxed by this way, but they also have the energy to deal with headaches that come with coaching. And second is keeping a realistic schedule. Coaches can get so busy they won't even remember what was on their to-do list without having it written down. So you must pen down everything. Everything has to be written down. So to help keep an organized schedule, invest in a planner and schedule and keep the room for the in the margins to make notes on certain tasks. So what you can do is that the coaches should stay away from stretching themselves too thin. So remember not to schedule too many obligations. Keep your obligations level down. Furthermore, allow ample time to complete each task by blocking off large slots in the schedule for events that take more time to complete. And following these tips will allow coaches to keep their days well planned and relieve the stress by knocking out obligations in an efficient manner. Then delegate the task. Don't take everything in your hand. So another way to stay organized and elevate some of your workload is by delegating tasks to the coaching assistants. So this is why there is a coaching staff. So remember that assistant coaches can handle tasks like making phone calls to other teams, administration, or some other potential prospects. Allow them to help plan itinerary for an upcoming road trip, for example, or hold meetings with certain subset of your team. So give them chance, and by trusting in the people around you, coaches can significantly reduce their stress levels. Then fourth one is allow time for your personal exercise. While coaches spend all the day working for and keeping players in good physical shape, they generally forget to find the time to stay in shape for themselves. So many coaches were once a competitive players and they know what it feels like to stay in shape. So as a coach, it can be very tempting to work for 12 hours a day and forget to schedule time for your personal exercise. So remember that exercising is one of the easiest and most rewarding ways to relieve your stress. Releasing your endorphins keeps people happy while loosening up the muscles to relieve stress and frustration. And of course, there are many other benefits, because if you are staying in a shape, the coach, he will, improve in his confidence, improve in his self-esteem, good body image, and moreover, he will set a good example for the players that demonstrate a commitment to your sports and commitment to the health. And of course, you will keep a healthy weight. Then coaches can do also breathing techniques. So when it comes to breathing techniques, it is important to inhale and exhale deeply. Breathing techniques have proven results that have helped everyone, including coaches and players, to manage stress. So this is something like same what we have discussed, in breathing for the players. Then spending time with your close one, it is again very important. So almost every sport has games during the weekends and practices normally during the week. So your busy schedule can make it easy to lose touch with family and friends. So remembering to spend time with these people can actually help you to relieve the stress. And in fact, these friends, either in the sports world or outside the sports industry, are great people to vent out your frustrations. So they can even bring new perspective to your coaching profession. So every person is important. So take out some break, talk to these people, and this will help you to release your stress. And family and friends also make a great counterbalance to your professional career and are an essential element to keep people grounded. And make sure to stay in touch with those that matters most, whether it is a phone call, whether a meal, or spending your daily time with a spouse. Do not lose touch with these people who matters most to you. They are very important for managing stress and keeping a stable work-life balance. And seventh is keep up with your hobbies. So make sure to preserve life outside of the coaching world. So remember, the coaching is not the end of the world. So you have to preserve your life outside of the coaching world. While this might seem to distract you from the profession, but it's not actually. Everyone has interests outside of coaching that are essential for keeping the mind fresh. So your hobbies can be like watching your latest TV series to generate a topic of conversation with other coaches, other players, with your friends and family. Expand your travel itinerary, both domestically and internationally. Hobbies are an important way to focus on something other than sports and give your mind a required break. Find something to hang on to outside of a coaching career. It's the people without a source of happiness outside of coaching that can struggle most. And last two, if needed, see a counselor. Now, this is very, very important. Many people believe that there is a stigma about asking a counselor. We feel that if we ask for a counselor, oh, how others will think, it means there's something wrong in me. But it's not like that. Ultimately, this can be the necessary step to manage your stress. Because these professionals, they have a fantastic ideas about managing stress. They have spent many years in school studying the latest techniques in stress management and come to the sessions armed with required expertise to potentially save careers and relationships. So see the counselor if it is required. And then stay positive. So think positive. Positive thought is important for stress because people often become worried if they are not performing, if they are performing badly. So therefore, it is important to view problems as a challenge or opportunities for improvement. And this sets a great example for players, even for the players, how to handle any problem. So if coach is handling himself very, in a good way, in a positive way, this will give a positive, vibe to your players, and this will help your players also to solve their problems in their own lives. Furthermore, this can translate into positive mindsets for the players and encourage success for the whole team. So the coach mind state will affect the team mind state. Okay. So in the last one is get to know your team personally. It's very important, to be, to see your team member individually and personally. So don't look at your team as a singular entity. Remember that your team is made up of individual people with individual stories. So getting to know players outside of practices and games can be easy as organizing. You can organize some like team dinners, maybe at restaurants or at someone's house. So setting up a team building activity. Maybe it can be done at an amusement park. It can be done, in some adventure center, or it can be done anywhere else, which allow the team to have a fun together. And coaches can even give anyone something to talk. So when you talk in a team, you develop a bond and you relieve the stress. And stress management is important for preserving the team atmosphere and personal life outside of work. So with this, I would like to conclude here with my lecture in last few lines. The stress management techniques can include an intervention that can modify one or more components of stress process. stress management techniques need to be directed at individual needs. It should be directed at individual needs and the issue at hand, which is at present, prevailing, as well as take into account the coping resources available to the player. What are the resources available to the player which he can, manage? As with the acquisition of any skill, application of stress management techniques requires, remember, we cannot, do any skill, just with the knowledge. You require, a lot of training, require time, and require practice. So knowledge is not sufficient. Knowledge is important, but knowledge is not sufficient, as it does not guarantee a player can apply the necessary skills or a program to his or her specific issue. It is the application, it is the practice which is necessary, and effort is needed on the part of the player and the coach to make the gains in stress management ability. So with this, I would like to end my presentation here. I would like to extend once again thanks to the federation, thanks to Mr. Yogendra Dhiya ji, the president, and thanks to all the viewers and listeners, coaches and players